Today, we're talking about a potential sleeper pick at the linebacker position in this upcoming NFL draft. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to hit that like, hit that subscribe, and follow the channel as we talk nothing but Washington Commanders football daily. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it as we are talking about a sleeper pick at the linebacker position in this upcoming NFL draft. And so just going back to yesterday's video, I talked about this article that was on Clutch Points. It's titled Commanders 3 Sleeper Prospects to Target in 2026 NFL Draft. And in yesterday's video, I talked about 2 of these NFL draft prospects. And so both of them being on offense, they were both wide receivers. And so we talked about that yesterday. And so make sure you check out that video. And so today, I wanted to talk about the last NFL draft prospect that is mentioned in this article as a potential sleeper pick. And today we're talking about linebacker Owen Heineke, who played for Oklahoma. And I will say this before we jump into just really the pros and the cons, with him as a player. Currently right now, he is fighting for another year of eligibility. And so he started off at Ohio State University as a lacrosse player, and then he transferred over to the Oklahoma Sooners, and he played all 4 seasons there. And so he's trying to get another year of eligibility. And it looks like that his appeal is going to be set to, be right before the NFL draft. And so I guess he will find out, if he's going to get another year of eligibility in college. And so this might be a player that does return back to the Sooners here. But assuming that he's going to stay into the NFL draft, let's go ahead and talk about him as a potential sleeper pick here. And so starting with the pros, and I think some of the things that he does well. And so I think when you look at the highlights for Heineke, you're going to see a player that has the speed to just really be a linebacker that can be sideline to sideline. And so I think that he makes a ton of plays that way. And I think that you start to see that production really take off as a sideline to sideline linebacker as he got more experience, because he didn't start off, starting for the Sooners. In fact, he starts off being a special teams player, which we'll talk about that more in a moment. The next thing with him is I think that he's a great tackler. Like, I think that this is a guy that certainly, he finishes his tackles. He goes through the ball carrier and everything else. And so I like his tackling techniques and things like that. And that is huge when you're talking about the Washington Commanders, especially last season with the missed tackles and things like that. And so that, I think, is another positive with him, is the fact that I think he's a pretty solid tackler, and I think he could get even better at the next level. The next thing for him is that he uses a kind of his speed and versatility to get off blocks. And so, maybe going back to the fact that, he played lacrosse. I did see that he also played, I think, a little bit of safety too as well in high school. And you start to see, some of those things kind of show up with his highlights and stuff like that. When he's getting off of blocks, he kind of uses that kind of speed, finesse, and footwork to go ahead and get to the ball carrier that way. And so I like that about him. And next, I like the motor that he has. And so he certainly competes at a high level, and he's not afraid of contact. Like, I think that even though he's not necessarily a power player, he does show the physicality, I think, in special teams. And then also, too, in some of the clips that I saw, he's certainly a player that will meet these blocks and certainly meet the ball carrier and everything else. And so I do like that kind of grittiness that he plays with at the linebacker position. And the next thing that I like with him, too, as well, is that you will probably get a player that I think that with that quickness and finesse, I think he'll be pretty solid in coverage as well. And so it kind of reminds me of Kane Madrano. And so we'll talk about that here in a second too, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of kind of what we saw with Kane Madrano here. And so, the next thing with him is just talking about just some of the things that he will have to work on here. And so one of the things is going to be the experience factor. And so he played special teams in 23 and 24 for the Sooners here, and really started to take off, I believe, in 2025. That's where he started to be, just really a focal point on defense there. And so 74 total tackles in 2025. He had 34 solos. He had 40 assists. He also had 4 pass deflections, and he had 3 sacks and 1 forced fumble. And so, again, remember the first couple seasons, he was just mainly playing special teams. And really in 2025, that's where he took off when they started to go ahead and play him as a linebacker. And so, just doesn't have a ton of experience at the position. The next thing with him that is talked about in his NFL draft buzz profile is the fact that it's play recognition. And so he looks to be a player that, look, if you need to send him, to maybe go through a gap, or you want him to just hit this assignment as a blitzer, like, he's perfect there. But when it comes down to, okay, he's going to have to, kind of diagnose the play a little bit, kind of fight through some blockers and get to the ball carrier there, it looks like that is something that he's going to have to work on, because really, when you talk about the National Football League, you talk about all these play fakes and just all these kind of designs that these offensive coordinators have and stuff like that. It's all about trying to get your eyes to go one way. Meanwhile, the offense is going the other way. And so he certainly would have to get better at the play recognition. And so that's one of the things that is talked about with him. The next thing, too, is going to be, I think, the size. And so that is also talked about, talks about the fact that, look, he would maybe have to put on some more weight there. If he does that take away from his quickness? And also, too, it talks about just the range there. I believe he has like a shorter arms or whatnot. And so if that's something that, you're big on in the National Football League, that is something that is talked about with him. But again, I think that you do see a player that can get off the blocks and stuff like that. And there's other players that have won at the next level that don't necessarily have just a whole bunch of length, when it comes to reach and all that other stuff like that. And so we'll see what happens with him if he decides to come into the NFL draft this upcoming season, or he decides to go back to college and develop a little bit more and come out this next season. But to me, like I said, I think that he reminds me a lot of a Kane Madrano. And I think that there are certain things that you like about him. And I think it just really shows you a player that I think that you would have to coach up some more. But I think certainly from day one, with Heinicke, he's a player that is going to be an immediate impact on your special teams, which is very important when you're talking about flipping the field. With the Washington Commanders, I felt like that was one of the better units for the football team this last season, was the team's unit. And so I think he would fit in perfectly there. As far as being a situational type of linebacker, I think that there is definitely some upside there. Could you coach him to be more than just that situational player? It's possible. Again, I think that for him, the biggest thing is going to be the experience. I think the more experience that he gets, the better off that he's going to be, which is why I think that, look, if he does go back, he plays another year of college football, I could see him getting even better. And even if he does come to the National Football League, he just needs some more reps. But it kind of reminds me of some of these younger linebackers that we already have. And so Kane Madrano, and then also to Ali Cajo. These are players that I think just need to be coached up some more. They need to be put into some more situations. I think that this would be the same here, for Heinicke. I think that Owen Heinicke really needs some more experience and just needs to get some more snaps. Is this a situation that the Commanders maybe take a chance on? Perhaps. If this is like a round 6 pickup or a round 5 pickup, I could see the Washington Commanders going that way. And so let me know in the comments here, what do you guys think if the Washington Commanders were to pick him up? Do you feel like Durante Jones would be able to utilize him? Or do you feel like, look, the Washington Commanders might want to go a different direction here? And so again, this was the player that was mentioned in this Clutch Points article. Wanted to go back and talk about that. And so once again, it is Owen Heinicke from Oklahoma, in which he played all 4 seasons. And again, he's fighting for this last season here. So he will find something out, I believe, a week before this NFL draft comes up. So anyway, you guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking here. And look, as we always say, go Commanders, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.